Active Love Adoptions podcast. I am your host, Jessica Griffith, and this is my lovely co-host, Heidi. And we are joined today by John Ruffini, who is an adoptive father, as well as an author, among many other impressive things on his resume that I don't want to say because then we won't look as good.
Yeah, our resume definitely doesn't look like that.
I know your resume. I was very impressed with your resume. You have so many wonderful things on there, and you've done so many wonderful things for people. So that's awesome.
I've been blessed. I enjoy what I do, and my wife would tell you I have way too many hobbies.
But that's a good thing. That's a very good thing, because when people ask me what my hobbies are, I said, is keeping my children alive not the only hobby that I should have?
That's working off.
Yeah. I guess. So you're okay. So tell us about your just give us a little background about yourself, and then we can jump into all the rest of it. We'll just see where the life takes us.
Okay. What do you want to know about me? I was born and raised in Maryland, currently live in South Florida. Okay. And by day, I've been in the recruiting and staffing industry for the past 30 years. I'm currently in the healthcare staffing space. Married 32 years and have 3 wonderful kids that are all adopted and all natural siblings.
Okay, so walk us through how you found your adoptive children, because they're from Chile, correct?
They are. We went to Chile. My sister-in-law adopted her oldest from Chile.
Okay.
So when it came time to adopt, we figured, let's go to a country. The cousins will have a bond. So it was a no-brainer for us to go to Chile. And we used the same agency that my sister-in-law used. The same person was still running it at the time. So on the front end of that, it felt comfortable and familiar. We adopted our son first and brought him home. He was 18 months when we brought him home. And then we adopted our middle child, our daughter, brought her home when she was 16 months old. And 2 weeks after we got home from adopting her, we found out that the birth mother had given birth again, and she would be putting that child up for adoption.
Okay.
And so they said, would you like to adopt her also? So I joke, I'm like, it's like you just had a baby, you got home from the hospital, and you're pregnant again. So
do you know the number of women that actually has happened to? My mother-in-law being one of them. I think she had her first 2 are real close together.
My 2 kids that were adopted, my girls, their biological siblings, are 9.5 months apart.
Wow.
Well,
my daughters are 17 months apart. So they're not that close, but close enough that they're pretty much twins. They act like twins.
Yeah. And so how was it with your kids being older when you adopted them? Not older, but just not newborn. So like 18 months and 16 months. Like, how was there any difference between adopting like a newborn versus, because was your third daughter a newborn when you adopted her, or was she older?
No, the third daughter, that's the challenging one. We brought her home and she turned 3 2 weeks after we brought her home. So it took us 3 years to adopt her.
Okay, so because it took you guys 3 years, you couldn't take her out of the country until like the adoption was finalized. Okay.
We didn't need her until we could bring her home.
Oh, okay. So with the other 2, because it was your son was 18 months and then your daughter was 16 months, did it take that long in order for you to adopt them? Or
the law in Chile, the way it was when we adopted them, the birth mother had 6 months to reclaim the child. Okay. So the birth mother would put the child up for adoption, but within that 6 month, the birth mother, birth father, any family members could say, you know what, we want to reclaim that child. After 6 months, if no one has claimed the child, then the child is officially up for adoption and can be adopted. And from there, it was about, a year process. So that's where the 18 months comes into play. And, with my son, we were kind of like deer in headlights because we'd never done it before. So basically, they send you off to a foreign country and they tell you, okay, so-and-so will meet you at the airport. They'll take care of you. So you're totally trusting blindly and you don't really speak the language. It was
Okay,
it
that's
was
what I was gonna
very,
ask.
I was curious too.
very,
could speak
very
to
interesting.
that.
We really literally we felt like that whole process, we were just being helped, led around the city, go here, sign this, do this. Okay. We had a
And
translator
it's
that
all in
really wasn't that
Spanish.
good. What's that?
You're like, what? You're like, what are we signing? Are we really signing to place? Or are we signing? Or like, are we going to be stuck in Chile forever?
There's a lot of trust that's involved. You
You
got
don't
to
know
trust.
you're
They wouldn't
signing.
put us in contact with these folks if they hadn't worked with them before and they didn't trust them. So we just had to have faith that we were with folks, and it worked out fine. Tony got the flu while we were down there, so new parents, toddler, flu. It was fun.
In a country that you don't understand language, and you're like, is there any Tylenol anywhere? Is there any is there a pediatrician that we can ask questions to? Like, what are we doing here?
It was a very big indoctrination into parenthood.
Yeah, I would say
that would be.
So how close are your first two then?
They are, let me see. So now they're 4 years apart.
Okay, so it was an 18-month process for your first son. And so it's like by the time you got something finalized, then it was like, oh, there's another baby. And so you're like, okay, now we got to go through this again. And then
well, it was interesting because we had adopted a boy, and my wife and I were talking. We said, okay, now let's adopt a girl. And we were deciding with Tony's adoption, it was really unsettling because we really didn't know what the heck was going on in the country and leading people around. So we're like, we don't have to go back to Chile. So we were exploring other international avenues. And then the phone rang, and the agency said, hey, Tony's sister was just put up for adoption. Would you like to adopt her? And that was a no-brainer. So we're like, yep, we're going back to Chile. And her process was smooth as silk.
Oh, perfect.
So how come it took longer with the last one?
Yeah. So do you want to walk us through that process?
Sure.
That one was 3. It was 3, right?
Correct. So I'll set the stage for you. Imagine this. Okay. So we're on adoption number 3, and actually adoption number 4, because the first one, the birth mother reclaimed her. So we didn't get the first one.
Was that international too? Because you wanted to go through Chile. So that was the
Chile.
First one, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So trying to bring home child number 3, we finally say, yep, we agree, we're going to go adopt her. So we start following the process. Now the laws had changed. So they went from a foster care system to an institutional system, orphanages. And the government was asserting more control to prevent baby trafficking and things like that apparently had been going on in some areas. But you could still do private adoption. So we tried to go through the government initially. We didn't get a response. So we said, all right, you can still do private, so we'll do private. So we just started down the same process we had gone through. And then we got the call. Our attorney said, hey, time to come down. Great. So we flew down thinking, okay, we'll be there for a couple of weeks. We'll go to court. We'll get the passport, all that kind of stuff, and we'll fly home with her. The day we arrive, our attorney meets us at our apartment, and the first thing he says is, we have a problem.
Oh, that's not something you like to hear, especially from an attorney.
No.
That's the last person you want to hear it from.
I'm like, could you have told me this before I got on the plane?
Yeah, right.
So what had happened was, and Heidi, to answer your question, unbeknownst to us, the government had started a separate adoption process in a separate jurisdiction with a Chilean family for the same child.
Oh, yeah, that is a problem.
That was a problem. Yeah. So it became, okay, what now? And we spent that 2 weeks, instead of thinking we were going to go through the process of adopting our 3rd child, we spent that 2 weeks really diving into the law and meeting with as many justices as we could. We were called to the U.S. Embassy for a meeting. We walk in, we've got the equivalent to their Secretary of Department of Social Services, cabinet member. We've got their attorney. We've got the U.S. ambassador. And the attorney looks at us and says, hey, you can adopt any child, just not this one. And I said, well, that's the only reason we came here, is because it's a sibling. And you know what was wild? And this showed the ignorance, which really got me going, is he said, well, your children haven't met her yet, so they won't know the difference. And I'm like, I said, have you ever
You're
adopted
like,
a
I'm
child?
sorry, excuse me.
Yeah. And I said, have you ever adopted a child? He said, no. I'm like, then you have no idea what you're talking about.
No, and you have no right also to tell me,
And
like,
I
I
that.
would have
know.
thought you would have had the rights just because you had the other two children.
Yeah.
Well, oddly
Since
enough,
you had the
Heidi, at the end of the
biological
day, and the initial judge that we met with, I will tell you the justices were unbelievably supportive. And the first judge that we met with said, do you want this child? And I said, absolutely, we will do whatever it takes. Because the government was like, look, we'll fight even if we have to go all the way up to the Supreme Court. And I said, okay, I'm in. And this judge said, look, if you will be patient, it will take a long time, but our law says, if not with the mother, the next preferred place is a home with siblings. And ultimately, that law will prevail if you can see it through. So we trusted her. And it was a rocky couple of years from that point on, with a lot of setbacks and a lot of resistance from this government agency. But eventually it did go to the Supreme Court, and eventually they ruled in our favor. So we ended up bringing her home.
What? I'm still confused as to why they fought it so much.
You know, I
it
don't know.
Was it
Uh,
because it was a Chilean family that was
Well, that's
wanting
why I was, yeah.
to
I mean,
adopt
what was
her
the,
and they wanted to keep, because I know with like we've had somebody who was adopted from Russia, and he
mhm.
said that if there's a law that if a Russian family wants to adopt the baby, then they have precedent over an American family.
And I'm sure that factored into it. Hey, like most countries, I assume they wanted to keep their children in the country if they could for cultural reasons. I totally get that. They claim that they didn't know that we were trying to adopt the child. Now, in Chile, you adopt the child in the city they're in, the jurisdiction that they're born in, which in her case was Santiago. So why did they go out to San Miguel, which is a different province, and start their processing out there? So it was interesting because that judge was about to grant the adoption. And she said, well, let me just see, this child was born in Santiago. Let me just do some research. And then she found our case in Santiago. So the two justices called each other and said, we're going to stop both of them. We got to figure this out. And we were able to meet with all the justices. We met with appellate court judges. The access was unbelievable, and they were very supportive, very receptive, and understanding. But you know, you're at the mercy, and you're going up against an agency of the government. You're thinking, okay, this isn't going to end well. And there were times during that 2-year stretch where, you know, my wife and I looked at each other and said, is this fair to keep her in an orphanage? Do we just throw in the towel and, you know, let her go to a home? But I had so much conviction. I said, it's not right. They're playing with a life, and they're afraid to, you know, at that point it was like, we don't want to lose. It wasn't about the child. My theory was they didn't want to lose, and they didn't want to lose to Americans.
Well, yeah, of course. And your thought is like, no, this is unfair to the child. This is unfair to her. We want her siblings know about her. They want her to. I'm sure you're, you know, Tony. And what's your second daughter's name?
My 3 children are Tony, Adriana, and Alexandra.
Okay, so Adriana and Tony were probably like, we want our sister. Like, we want her no matter what it takes.
We talked about it.
You probably felt. Yeah, go ahead.
No, continue.
I was just gonna say they probably felt, or you probably felt like, I'm fighting for my child. Like, this is my child, even though yes, she was born, but like you had her siblings, and you're like, I'm not gonna throw in the towel. Like, if this was my biological daughter, would I just be like, oh, it's fine, I'm just gonna throw in the towel and be done with it? No.
Obviously, they didn't know what.
I mean,
and that's what
people.
That's what people, I think, don't realize. If you've, you know, for those that have never adopted, again, I don't know natural childbirth. I don't know what that's like. And I missed the months of sleeping, pooping, eating, and changing diapers. I, you know, bypassed all of that. So I don't know what those people go through. And what I tell people is, until you've gone through an adoption, you have no idea the connection and the love and the bond that gets created before you even meet this person. And I can't describe it. It just transcends everything. So yeah, our 2 kids at home, they were talking about baby Alex. When are we going to get baby Alex? You know, oh, let's prepare baby Alex's room. Let's do this. Wouldn't baby Alex like that? So it was, the conversation was there. And when we came home without her the first time, they were devastated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. So how long were you over there, and did you have to keep going back through that 3-year period?
Yes. We were over there initially for 2 weeks and then did all we could, came home, and then we had to go back 2 more times for 1 week and 2 weeks respectively. So a total of 5 weeks and 3 trips.
And did you take the children with you?
We
Like,
did not.
okay, so
When we
just
adopted
you and your wife.
Adriana, we took Tony with us.
Okay. But just
And
because this was such a,
I wouldn't take 'em either.
nightmare back and forth, you're like, let's just keep you here. Who did they stay with then?
They
When you
were
and your
also in
wife were-
school, so we didn't want to
Okay.
disrupt that.
Yeah.
They stayed with a couple people. They stayed with my sister. They stayed with my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law came and stayed at our house so that their routine wasn't disrupted.
Yeah.
Very, very blessed to have a good family network that supported us
Yeah.
tremendously through that.
And they all live, so they're all in South Florida, or were you
This was in
somewhere else?
Maryland. Yeah,
this was in
we lived
Maryland. Okay.
at the time. We lived in a town on Maryland's eastern shore called Easton, and
Okay.
all of my in-laws live in the same town. And I had a sister that was an hour away.
So are they sad that you guys moved to South Florida, like away from them?
Yeah, we get back there, you know, every Christmas time, and my wife goes up more regularly to visit her father, he's
Okay.
still alive and still lives there. So she likes to go back and visit him. My son still lives in Maryland. He didn't make the move. My 2 daughters are in Orlando, Florida. So they're about 3 hours north of us. One finished up
Okay.
school in December. The other's finishing up in May. So they've been going to school together.
That's awesome. I've always wanted to go to college with a sibling. I'm the youngest of 5. And so all of them, by the time I was like in elementary school, because I was a little bit of a, accident, they were like married in college, doing their own thing. And it was just me.
Then you're in elementary.
And I was in elementary school.
It's so funny you say that. So I am also the youngest of 5. And
oh my gosh,
all of my siblings are like 2 years apart. And then between me and my closest siblings, there's 6 years. And I used to say to my mom, I'm like, you can't tell me I wasn't an oops. And she's like, oh no, you weren't an oops. She would never tell me. Classic Italian mom. She's like, oh no, we planned everything. I'm like, okay.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, my mom tells me the same thing. She's like, you weren't an accident. I'm like, what do you call that then? She's like, no. I'm like, it wasn't planned. So then what is the opposite of not planned? And she's like, well, you keep me young. And I was like, that's not an answer. Yeah. So, because my oldest sibling.
It was a chosen mistake.
It was a chosen mistake.
There you go. I like that.
And I was like, I also got pregnant, not accidentally. I don't know. Whatever. So it's funny what your parents tell you that to make you feel. I'm like, Mom, look, I'm in my 40s. I don't care. Like, I get it. I'm also a mom. Like, accidents happen.
Right.
So it's fine. And I'm sure you're your parents' favorite.
Well, they would never say that. My parents are both deceased, unfortunately. But my mom would always, oh no, we love all of our children equally. I'd be like, just, we had I'd like to think, because eventually it was like toward all my siblings were out of the house at one point. It was just me. So it was like an only child, which was kind of cool.
Yeah. I know. I loved it too. My sisters joked because we had a decent house, and so when everyone was gone and I was in high school, my sister's like, yeah, you had the whole west wing of the house. And I'm like, yeah, I did. The west wing. And I was like, I'd turn my music up and I'd be like, I'd dance from like room to room. And like, I'd be like, what room do I want to sleep in tonight? They're like,
I
you're
can't
so
compare
spoiled.
because I'm the oldest of 10.
Oh yeah. She's the oldest of 10.
So
10.
Yes.
Wow. That's a big family.
My mom's actually the founder of this agency. And so
wonderful.
So there's me, and my youngest sister is 22. So she's adopted 8 children
and had
2 biological.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah.
I know.
A big family. So I have a sister that's younger than my children.
I didn't realize your mom was the founder. I remember reading about her on the website that she
Kathy,
had 10 children.
yes.
So that's pretty amazing.
Yes, I'm the oldest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. And Kathy's a hoot. Oh my gosh. She is so smart, and just the thing about like starting the agency and all the things that she's done for the agency, and the people who work for the agency, and the different types of jobs that she has created are just, I mean, it's fascinating to me.
Mm.
And she's always like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Like my brain's all over the place." I'm like, "Your brain's not all over the place. Like you've got it more together than I do." So
literally, she still has all the brothers are still at home because they all have issues.
yeah.
And so she still is taking care of 4 of my brothers. So
Yeah, which is
Wow.
hard because she's in her 70s.
70s.
Okay, I was like, oh no,
Holy
I'm
cow.
like aging her.
But you would not
You wouldn't
even
know
know
that.
it. No, her and my dad love Disneyland, so they go all the time.
It's actually
And they
cute.
go on all the rides too, not just
Oh.
travel to Disneyland.
Oh,
Wow,
that's
well,
interesting. I won't even go on all the rides.
They do.
I know we've
go
had
all
our
the
hands full with 3. I can't imagine 10.
That's what I say. I have
Mm.
3 boys at home, and I'm like, I feel like there's 10 of them just because of how many times they're like wrestling and mom, so and so broke my glasses, or mom, like
I have 4.
all the time. And I'm just like, how do people do it with more than that? My mom had 5. I'm like, how did you not lock us in rooms more?
My
I
parents
adopted.
and my wife's parents, we always say, because my wife, I was family of 5. She was a family of 4, and our parents made it look so easy. And
I know.
I don't know how, but they just did.
And they seem to have it more together.
They did have it more together. Like it was a well-oiled machine. My dad would get up, he'd go to work. My mom, it's like dinner was on the table every night from scratch. It was,
Yes.
homework was this and this, like, and then Saturdays you did this. It was such a well-oiled machine. And then when my mom calls me now, I'm like, I can't talk. I think my house is burning down. My kids are running around, no pants on, and I don't know, have to be somewhere in 10 minutes.
My standard line to everybody is, I was the greatest parent in the world before I had kids.
Yes. Yes. You're always like, oh, I won't do this. I won't do that. I won't do
Yes.
this. And you're like, okay, let's see what happens when you have children. That all goes right out the window.
You could say you
Yep.
won't, but you will.
Yes, you will.
So yes, you will. Exactly. So you said it was a little bit challenging, not challenging to meet, like when you met Tony, but obviously your first time parents. What was your, like, put kind of those feelings aside, what was your first experience like when you held him and you saw him, and just what are more all those feelings that you had when you first, like your very first adoption, like went through?
Wow. Surreal. We're in our apartment, and the foster mother and her husband came by and introduced us to Tony and kind of left him with us for a few hours so we could get acquainted. And here was this, he was walking. It was, toddler, just to add water. He's, instantly walking, and he's a boy, so he's playing with stuff. And it was pretty wild. And again, it was all new to us. We'd never been parents before. So we're like, okay, we love kids. So that part was easy.
Yeah.
But then it's like, okay, what do we do? and it was,
you're like, do we look at him? Do we look away from
I know
him? Like,
so it was interesting in the sense that it was, I mean, it was an instant love. I mean, we loved him from the minute he walked in the room, and
yeah.
just thought he had the coolest personality. He was funny. He was engaging. He liked to laugh. Yeah, it was a pretty cool moment.
How did you guys prepare? Because obviously it didn't just happen, like with us, we do infant adoptions, right? So we are with the birth mother, she has the baby, we do the relinquishment all at the same time. And so then
Wow.
you just kind of have all that happening within like a 24, 48-hour period of time. How did you guys like prepare at home before you had him? Like, what were some of the things that you guys did to prepare to have this child? Because obviously you knew he was going to be probably a toddler by the time you got him. So right. What were some of those preparations like?
Well, that's okay. So we obviously we were in a 3-bedroom house at the time, and we had a room set up with a crib and all ready for him from that perspective. Now, as you know, with adoptions, you have to go through the home study and that wonderful invasive process where you open up your lives to everybody. And we lived on a farm at the time. We were renting a farmhouse on my in-laws' property, and it was old. And they came out and tested our water, and the water tested high for nitrates. I'm like, I don't even know what that is. And it was well water. So I said, well, I got this. I had gone out and gotten a little jug kind of dispenser. I'm like, that's purified water. And they're like, no, not good enough. You have to dig a new well.
Oh my
So
gosh.
we had to dig a new well.
Isn't that
So
like
we did a lot of
$10,000
preparation
or
for this.
something?
What's that?
Isn't it like $10,000? Like it's not just a really quick, like, oh, just dig a well. It's like kind of a big deal.
I joke with people. I'm like, if every parent that conceived naturally had to go through the process of what adoptive parents have to go through before they get a child, our population would be halved.
It would be. It would.
Yeah,
be.
That's very true.
It is.
But
they're very.
Yeah, they're very, very thorough. Now I get it, and I'm glad they do it.
Yeah.
You know, you wouldn't want it any other way. So we felt like we had prepared a really nice, great, loving environment to bring our son home into. We lived on a farm at the time, so it was really, you know, peaceful and quiet, and lots of room to play. So we were pretty excited. Bought a station wagon.
Oh, see, you got a station wagon. Did the station wagon have seatbelts? Because I remember the one we had did not have seatbelts back in the day.
This one did, and we even got like the back seat that faced the back of the car.
Oh, the best kind of station wagon. The one that you get car sick in. I always loved to sit back there. All my friends, like we didn't have one personally, but my friends would have one. I'd be like, I get the back seat. It's the only time you call the back seat. Only time you call the back seat.
But we were both anti-minivan, so we settled on a station wagon.
Yeah, I can't. I still can't do a minivan. You have a minivan. I just can't. I can't get around it.
My kids were so, when we adopted them, they were so close together.
Oh yeah.
That I had no choice.
You needed like the car seats and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, you bypassed the infant car seat. You went right to the toddler one, right?
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
Oh man.
I mean, I had 4 kids in 5 years.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. You were busy.
Yeah. Yeah, I was. Well, see, we started when I was 24. By the 29, that was my last child. So
yeah, because she adopted all 4 of her kids. So you know, it's kind of like, you know, when they call you don't have a choice. No. I mean, you do have a choice. You can say no, but also
my 2 girls are biological siblings.
Okay.
Too. So
excellent.
The ones that were close.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And so my birth son, his adoptive family, so he was the first, and then they adopted 2 more girls, but they was like a year apart. So like he graduated high school, the next year the next one graduated high school, the next year graduated. So they all had their kids.
They're really close together.
Super close together. Because you know, when they call you, you're like, yeah, we want to do this again. And some people purposely have children close together.
I felt like I had a baby all the time. And then when my youngest started to grow up, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm supposed to have a baby.
You're supposed to have a baby right now.
Where's my baby?
Sometimes I feel like that. I have a 5-year-old, and I'm like, wait, did I forget someone at the store?
No, I forgot.
Or did I forget to take, like, did I leave him home with my husband and I forgot to take him? I'm like, oh wait, no, he's in school. Okay, I'm good. I have all my things. All right.
My sister, when she started having children, she would have me go with her when she had 2 kids. I'm like, excuse me, I have 4. And I had to go grocery shopping by myself.
It does feel overwhelming.
I had to do all that by myself, you know.
Oh my gosh.
Much respect to you, Heidi.
Oh, thank you.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
And needless to say, I still have them all 4 at home. So I don't know. I think I did something wrong.
No,
not at all.
There's no rule book to parenting. Plus, the world out there is really crazy. I don't know if you want to let them leave your house ever. Just keep them in a bubble.
It is easier.
We are preparing as we speak. Both my daughters are probably moving home in August.
Okay. So what are their plans once they like move home? Like, are they planning on getting jobs? Do they want to live together and maybe in an apartment in a year? Like, what are their plans?
Their plans are to save money so they can pay off their student loans.
Which is a good, I mean, you're a money maker, you're an advice guy for money. So like they're listening to probably your rules.
Well, you hope they listen, right? But
they pretend to listen.
So Adriana, the older of the 2, she is studying graphic design, and she will have a job lined up. She had an internship last semester that grew into a part-time job this semester. It's her last semester in the program. So when she graduates, she will probably get offered a full-time job, and it's a 100% remote job. So she can do it from here. So she'll be, and she's always been the child that Adriana's always been like the one that has it all together. She's the one that we worry least about. She's got her life all planned, like she's good to go. The youngest wants very desperately to be a nurse. So Alex wants to be a nurse. And the plan is when she comes down here, She was unable to get into nursing programs because of the requirements. So she graduated with her general studies degree, and she's gonna come down here and probably enroll in a LPN program for a year.
Okay.
And then go to work in a hospital. So I work for a company now. Our parent company is the largest healthcare system in the country. So I'll be able to get her into one of our hospitals through that connection.
That would be really nice.
And then they will probably send her to nursing school.
Oh, that's really cool. Because yeah, nursing school is hard. I'm sure it's expensive, like everything else right now is just through the roof.
So you know that it's always in demand also.
Oh, it's never going to go away.
Yeah.
It's
Correct.
a job it's not going to be able to be taken over by AI, because
No.
that would be
Right.
scary.
Don't never
If
say
I'm in a
never.
hospital, a robot comes in to check my stats, I'm going to be pretty freaked out.
I know.
I'm sorry, I'm leaving.
It's the Terminator. Like it just is freaking me out. And I don't think we have enough research. I do not think we have enough research on AI to know like what the future holds, because it is I mean, the scam calls that are coming just because of AI are like so scary.
Yes.
And how
agreed.
they can impersonate your voice exactly, or somebody voices, like it's, oh my gosh, I just don't answer phone calls of numbers I don't know.
Well, they can make videos like that.
I know. I always tell my boys, I'm like, be careful of what like videos and pictures you send, because somebody can take your face and make it into something it's not. And that's a whole other problem.
I used to joke
well, what does
with
Tony
the whole,
do?
What does Tony do? Tony has his own business. He does landscaping and pressure washing.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off before.
No, that's okay. Tony had a lot of and this was interesting. So this was also a twist with the whole adoption thing. So we knew very little about their medical backgrounds, and Tony had some physiological challenges. So he had some learning difficulties, and we were really, really psyched to get him to graduate high school. He loved lacrosse, and a college in North Carolina expressed interest in him. So that was his way of getting to try out college. But Tony really wasn't a books person, wasn't a school person. It's just not his thing. So he loves the outdoors, loved nature, and he would never do an office job. It's just not, it's not his deal. So he's very good at what he does. And he's done construction, he's done different types of jobs, and he settled on landscaping and pressure washing, and he loves, creating through that and having fun. So knock on wood, he's doing good.
That's awesome. And honestly, I believe, like, I hate office jobs, to be honest. I'm a hairdresser by trade, and I am happy to work 12-hour days, but I need to be the one picking my schedule. I don't like to be told what to do. But I just think that there's like, college isn't for everybody, right? And
correct.
We need all kinds of people for the world to work. And I think that's awesome that he's doing landscaping and pressure washing, right?
Yep.
So that's awesome.
And as a parent, the way I was raised, my parents were like, oh, you're going to go to college, you're going to get a job, you're going to provide for your family. So that's in my mind. So it took me a little bit of while to come to grips with that it's okay that he doesn't go to college. And I was like, it's okay. It's all right. Let him find what he likes to do and encourage that. But that took a while for me personally to allow myself to be okay with that. I mean, now I'm just like, no, there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, I also think it's a generational thing too, because I was raised similarly. My dad went to college. All my siblings, with the exception, my brother didn't go to college because it wasn't for him. But it was like, yeah, you graduate high school, you move away, you go to college, you get a job, you're at that job until you die.
Right.
But now it's different, because people don't stay typically at jobs for, like, my dad still works at the same law firm he's worked at for 50 years, but that doesn't happen anymore. People are moving jobs, like your wife says, you have a lot of hobbies. You have your kind of hand in a lot of different pots and areas, and more people are more entrepreneurial type nowadays, I think. And so we realize that maybe the construct of formal education isn't for everyone. And sometimes, like, maybe even you don't need it, because there's a lot of money to be made, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in one specific box.
Absolutely. And I think you're right. It's a generational thing. And there's a huge entrepreneurial spirit with the generation that's out there today. And they're finding ways to create careers that are, you know, off the beaten path, so to speak, and they're having a blast doing it.
I know. And I think maybe some of us spent too long being too serious and not having a blast.
Totally.
That we're trying to find having a blast now.
I got married at 18.
Oh yeah, she got married at 18.
I've been with my husband since I was 16, so there.
Yeah.
He was my high school boyfriend.
Well,
so
hey, when you know, I guess, right?
Yeah, there was nobody I wanted to marry in my high school.
It's a Utah thing.
Yeah, it is a Utah thing. I grew up in California. We didn't do that.
Oh, that's where my mom was from. She got married at 16.
Oh, that's true. Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah. Kathy, her mom got married at 16.
Yeah, and then she had
not because she was pregnant.
Yes.
But
no,
my mother-in-law got married at 16.
So maybe it's just like it was a thing. Well, and also I think people, you know, my parents are in their 80s. Granted, my mom got married when she was 25, but I think back then it was more, you know, you graduated high school and people, you know, you graduate high school, but you go to college to get a career to take care of your family, correct? But a lot of those people are like, okay, well, I'm going to marry this 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 16-year-old. It just kind of is how it worked out back then. It's a completely different culture.
It was
now.
a hippie time.
It was a hippie time for lots of things.
Like free love.
Yeah, free love. Did you experience any type of like stereotypes or maybe misconceptions? You said your sister-in-law had adopted, so you knew of adoption and stuff. Did you get any pushback from maybe other people outside family, you know, talking with you about adoption?
Before the first adoption, yeah, we got pushback actually from my own family because my family had never encountered adoption. And I had one sibling in particular that was really just adamant, like, why aren't you doing in vitro? Why aren't you doing in vitro? And I'm like, we don't want to do in vitro. It's like, we have no desire to go down that road and it's no guarantee anyway. So we had talked about this and this is the route we're going. And, you know, not until we brought Tony home and they met him that it all of a sudden just went out the window. But my mom, it's funny, we brought him home and shortly after we brought him home, we had a family reunion that on my mom's side of the family that we all gathered with. So we had relatives coming down from New York and Pennsylvania, New Jersey, all around. And my mom was so excited. She kept saying, "Oh, come meet John's adopted son." And I'm like, "Mom, you can just say son.
Just son, Mom.
It's just son." But again, that was like, it was all new. And so, yeah, there was a little bit of learning curve on my side of the house. My in-laws were used to it, so they were perfectly fine. It was not an issue at all.
Because your sister-in-law went through the adoption, you didn't say, ugh, sorry, I'm slurring my words. Why did you guys choose to do international adoption? Okay, so part one, how did you decide to do international adoption versus stateside? And then part two is, I know your sister-in-law had the same agency, correct? So you just went through hers, and was that a stateside agency that worked with international like other countries, or was it actually in Chile that the agency?
It was a stateside agency.
Okay.
It was at the time it was based out of Washington, D.C. It was a stateside agency. So we chose international largely in part because of my fear of domestic. And while I don't know what the percentages are, but I was afraid that I didn't want to look over my shoulder my whole life and at 15 years old get a knock on the door and it be a birth parent saying, "I want my child back," and have to go through all that. And you read about those cases and it just taints your mind. So I was like, I don't want to have to live like that. So we're going international. And then of course, the country was a no-brainer to start because of the country that my sister-in-law had adopted from. So that's how that came about.
A lot harder.
What the stateside? Oh, international home studies are harder.
You go through a lot more paperwork.
What's the difference? So, like, what do they look for?
To be certified.
Oh,
and many copies.
Oh my gosh! Did you have lots of papers?
Yeah,
lots of papers.
And
a file that you like reference. This is our book.
Oh, we've got it. Yeah, and again, we're very open we've been very open with our kids, you know, from the get-go about you know, how we became a family. And the documents that you file, they have an expiration date. So with Alex's adoption, because it went on so long, we had to redo a whole bunch of them.
Oh my god.
Because they expired.
It's like
we had to
taking
get
the
a new home
CPA
study. We had
test.
to file new
Yeah.
paperwork with immigration. It was crazy.
Oh my gosh. That would be a
Yeah.
nightmare.
Yeah.
That would be a nightmare.
Yeah.
Okay, so because they were like Tony wasn't ever in an orphanage because that's and because
Correct.
that's how the law worked, right? But with Alex, there she was in the orphanage. So do you know who their birth mom is? And did you ever meet
We
her
want
or have you ever had contact with her?
so that's a regret. We never met her.
Okay.
We had planned as part of our trip that first time we went down there thinking we were going to bring Alex home, we had planned to meet her. We figured this was our last child. We weren't going to adopt anymore. Our family be done. And we wanted to meet her, take pictures, get some information in case our kids ever wondered. And once all this started shaking down and we found out the whole government thing, and we're like, you know what, if we ever have to testify, if they're going to accuse us of influencing and a judge were to ever ask us, have you ever met the birth mother? We didn't want to lie. So we wanted to confidently be able to say, no, we've never met her.
Yeah.
So there's no shenanigans going on. And unfortunately, we never met her.
Okay. And is there any is there any way of contacting her? And have your kids ever said, "Oh, hey, I'm interested in meeting my birth mom"? Is that a possibility? And
Much to our surprise, no. We've talked about it and we said, hey, we're happy to orchestrate that and go down there, and none of them really have a desire. Now, it's interesting. So Adriana and Alex was in foster care for 6 months, and then the law changed and they took her out and put her in an orphanage. And she was in the same foster home as Adriana was.
oh,
So they both had the same foster mother who, to this day, keeps in touch with all my kids.
oh, that's really
Through the beauty
cute.
of Facebook. And
I know, right?
that's been a blessing. So we would like to take them down there and show them where they were from, and we'd love to go down there and have them meet their foster mother in person, all grown up. I think
I'm sure she
she
would
would
love that.
appreciate that. And I know my kids would too.
Yeah.
But no, they express. No, it's funny because Tony, the oldest, Tony internalizes everything. And growing up, Tony just didn't want to be seen as different. So Tony didn't like to say he was adopted.
Yeah.
He would say, yeah, my sisters are adopted, I'm not. He'd always say, I'm Italian like my dad. And funny enough, all my kids look like me. They really do.
Yeah.
It just looks like,
so people were like, okay.
it's God works in mysterious ways. My wife is fair skinned and blonde, and I'm Italian, and my kids are Latino, and they've got the skin complexion, the hair, the eyes. They all look like me. So so, and my girls, Adriana would, is fine with it, but she has no desire to meet her birth mother. And Alex, as a kid would tell everybody, well, I had a foster mother, I have a birth mother, I've got my real mother. She was an open book.
She sounds like she's a good time.
They're all great kids, and it's cool to. Alex and Tony have a lot of similarities, more so than Adriana and the other two from a personality perspective. The two girls are extremely
more
creative.
Organized.
What's that?
Yeah. I said, oh my gosh, Adriana, right?
Mm-hmm,
I just said it and I'm like, but she's more organized and maybe more like right-brained and logical. And it sounds like maybe Alex and Tony are more creative. And is that fair to say? Or
they're all creative.
I know, but she did the graphic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But
they're
she's
all
really
creative,
organized.
Yes. Adriana's more serious.
Okay.
Oddly, like she's very frank, tells you what's on her mind, not in a bad way, but she's just doesn't have time for small talk. Got an incredible sense of humor, though, very dry sense of humor. She and Alex are both artistically gifted.
Okay.
We've got artwork here in our home that they've done that's just remarkable. I mean, I can't draw. That's and when I see them just free form do a painting of something, I'm just like, how the heck do you do that? So that's been fun.
That's awesome. I'm sure you love watching them as they've grown up and just flourish and really kind of hone into their specialties in a way, with just, I love watching my boys, their personalities and things come to light and see how they joke with each other and me, and it's fun.
Absolutely.
So, and so then your book Quest for Alex, then that is about Alex, correct? Your youngest?
Correct. It's the story of the, there it is. I don't know if I can see, you can see that. No,
Oh, it's blurry.
It's blurry.
It's blurry.
It's the story of, it goes into a little bit of all the adoptions, but the brunt of it is the story of Alex's adoption and all the hurdles that we had to go through. As I was going through it, so I journaled all the adoptions. I just did, because I like to write, and I wanted a record of it. And it was funny because when we went to adopt Alex, I said to Lisa, my wife, I said, you know what, I just don't feel like journaling again. And then as soon as the you know what hit the fan on that first day, I was like, yeah, I think I better start journaling. So
you're like, I need to write this stuff down.
When we got back, I'm like, this is when it was all done. So it had a happy ending. So thank God. And I said, you know what? I need to document this and share it with folks, because it's just an unbelievable saga that we just went through, and people wouldn't believe it unless they were part of it. And a lot of people went through it with us, obviously friends and family. So I had started writing the book when they were younger. And then my wife said, you know, this is their story. You cannot do anything with this until they're of age and they give you their approval. I'm like, you're absolutely right. So I kind of shelved it and then waited and picked it up again around COVID and talked to them about it. And we established some ground rules. So some names are changed to protect the innocent. You know, Adriana is very private. So she's like, don't use my real name. I said, I won't. Lisa's the same way. And all the people that we dealt with the agency in Chile and our attorney, all that has been changed. So it's a really cool story, and I'm excited that it's being well received by those that read it, both who knew us and who didn't know us.
Yeah. So is it self-published then?
It is self-published, yes.
Okay. And you put it on Amazon, correct?
It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Goodreads, all the major outlets. It's out there. It also,
how do you go about? Sorry, I'm terrible, John. I am totally my mother right now. You continue, and then I will ask my next question.
I was going to say, as part of it, so one of my vested hobbies is, because I like to write, I'm also a songwriter. I've got a music studio at home, and I write songs. So I had written a song for Alex. So as part of the book, you get a link to the song that's out there on iTunes and Spotify and everything. That's for her and about her. So it's kind of cool. What are you gonna ask me?
I don't know, because I'm so intrigued by the song. I want you to play it right now.
It's a song called Once in a Lifetime.
Okay, and I can find it on iTunes?
You can find it on iTunes. If you look up John Ruffini, Once in a Lifetime, it's out there. I'm
doing it right now. I'm going to do it right now so that I can remember what it's called, because I'm going to listen to it on my way home. Because Once in a Lifetime. So that's so cool that you are also a songwriter. Like, is that something you've always, from a small child, have you always done that?
Yes, as early as I could reach the keys on the piano, I was playing it, and I didn't really start writing until probably I was in college. But yeah, both my brothers are musical, and I guess they kind of influenced me, and I love music and I love to write. So it just became a really cool outlet for emotions and feelings and things like that. So at one time that was like the big dream, but
yeah.
You know,
you wanted to be the next John Bon Jovi or
something along those lines. Wasn't too much to ask. But no, that didn't take shape, but that's okay. I just write for me.
So do you play any instruments then? And are you the one singing on the song?
He plays piano.
Yeah, I play piano, keyboards, and I'm the one singing on the song.
Ooh, maybe we'll send it to the Grammy people. You might get your Grammy after all. No, I don't know the Grammy people. I'm sure I could find out who the Grammy people are. The social media.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. You'll have to tell me what you think.
Okay, I will. I'm excited. Like, I love music. Music is like feeds my soul. I love all kinds of music. I when I'm getting ready, I'm listening to music. If I'm in the bath, I'm listening to music, like mellow music. I just, that it's like when I'm sad, I listen. When I'm happy, it just really, it's how I kind of cope with life sometimes.
I'm a music person.
And so I wanted to be like a Britney Spears. I mean, this was pre-head shave.
I like that clarification.
I'm glad it was free and not
pre-head shave because I was in high school when she came out. So like her, I'm like, I want to be that person. My mom's like, no, you're not going to be that person because those people don't turn out well.
We talk about our parents' generation, right? So yeah, when I was going into school, they're like, well, what do you want to study? And I'm like, well, maybe music. Nope, can't get a career in music. I'm like, well, I love sports. What about sports journalism? Nope, too hard of a road. So, I ended up studying computer science because I could get a job and provide. And then that career lasted 7 years before I found recruiting. So,
and do you love recruiting? I mean, more so than computer science?
Love recruiting. Yeah. Love the industry. Love what it's about. Yeah, absolutely love it. And for the past 10 to 15 years, what I've morphed into a role where I am now training others to do the craft. So training, mentoring, coaching, love that. Love that I'm doing it in the healthcare space now because you're literally impacting human life with every person you put to work. So it's kind of cool.
You should create a downloadable, so you can give that to people to train them on recruiting. I mean, I know you're training people right now, but you could probably do a PDF. I believe in you, John. If anybody can do it, you can do it.
Thank you, Jessica. I probably could.
Are you talking about making the song or something?
No, I'm saying because he says he's teaching people how to be recruiters, and I'm saying if he can create his own system, like a program, and then he can sell the program. Because he doesn't have enough hobbies. So don't tell your wife I told you that.
Yeah,
I know.
You said
I'll say, hey, got a new idea.
She's gonna email me and be like, how could you? He already doesn't have the time.
Now I really will never see him.
You guys can do it together.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
But you seem like you'd be a very good recruiter. You're very personable. You're very easy to talk to. And some recruiters, let's be honest, my husband went through a period of time where he had lost his job during COVID and all this other stuff. And he was, he would have people reach out to him on LinkedIn, recruiters and stuff, and they're dry. If all recruiters were like you, I think more companies would do better, honestly.
The recruiters I train, it's unfortunate because there are some really good recruiters out there, but most of them are not. Most of them are not interested in the people that they work with. They're just looking to make a buck and make a placement. And the recruiters I train, I always tell them, I said, look, it's really not that hard to be better than most of your competition. Because if you just care and focus about what the person you're working with wants, then everything else takes care of itself.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I think is kind of true in life, right? If you just show that you care, I mean, it goes back to you getting Alex, where you're like, I am not giving up on this child. I care about her. Her siblings care about her. My wife cares about her. And I'm not going to give up on this person. And that is something too, that we at the agency, we were talking with one of our case managers right before you. That was the one we were recording. And our number one goal in life, I think, especially with the agency, is to make people feel seen, heard, loved, cared about. And we are 100% on your team, no matter what.
That's
wonderful.
I
think that's what people want, right? I mean, that's just what most humans want. It's just support.
And when you're going through that, that's what you need.
Yes. And it's hard when people don't understand what you're going through. It's you need to have a safe space of that support so that you can talk about the hard things, or you can cry about the hard things together. And I'm sure it was probably really hard for you and your wife to have that emotional weight on you guys and feel like you could only probably talk to each other. I'm sure you guys maybe talk to family a little bit, but when you're not you guys were physically going through the trips and all the paperwork and all the things. And I'm sure it was emotionally and physically and mentally draining on you guys for those 3 years.
Well, sure. And before the first one, all your friends are having kids and you're not. And everybody's like, oh, when are you going to have a kid? Okay, just, don't ask that question. It became very, very
bitter.
tough.
I don't want to say bitter, but it's hard not to be when everyone has the one thing that you want.
Yeah, it's hard.
And you start asking, you're like, okay, well, why me? Why us?
Yeah.
You know, you go through all those emotions. And, you know, medically, there was no reason why we weren't conceiving. Everything was checking out. It just wasn't happening. And part of us, we look back sometimes and say, you know, maybe God was telling us that we just shouldn't be parents. But
then there would be no population, John, if that's true. God would be like, nobody can parent on this planet. So I am going to revoke your privileges right now.
Oh my gosh.
Like, we're done. We're done.
There's a lot worse. There's a lot of really bad people.
There's really bad parents. And I never understood. I mean, me being one of those parents that just like gets pregnant at like 19 when I don't want to be, right? Me being one of that person. I had this like tender spot in my heart for the people. I'm like, because I lived with the substitute family. I lived in California when I conceived, and I needed to get out of California. So I moved to Utah, and they placed me with a substitute family. So these are families that signed up to say, we will take a birth mother in and she can live with us for the duration of her pregnancy, free of charge, like no rent, like
That's
nothing of that nature.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but they were also strangers to me, which was a little bit weird.
Awkward.
They were waiting.
And they were waiting to adopt. So that also kind of muddied.
Ooh.
But because adoptions
were they waiting to adopt your child?
Then, no, they didn't adopt the child because you couldn't, like, the way
it was mostly closed.
It was a mostly closed adoptions 21 years ago. And so it just the way that it worked out, they couldn't unless we had unless I decided to do it like privately. But I just remember thinking, so in my very last trimester, I think I had maybe 4 weeks left in my pregnancy. She miscarried. And I just was gutted. I'm like, I can't stay here. I'm like, here I am, 19 years old, not wanting to be pregnant at all. Like, I want no part of this. And here she is. She wants nothing more than to be a mother. And she is being reminded every day that she can't be because of me. And then she has this miscarriage. And I just was like, it's not fair.
Wow.
It's not fair. And it broke my heart. It still breaks. I'm like, I feel like I'm a little emotional right now. Cause I'm like, it just broke my heart for her. And I know I have many friends who can't have kids on their own. And I'm like, it's just not fair. Cause you see these other people getting pregnant and that you're like, you shouldn't be.
Oh, well, I had a friend that said to me, he's like, and they weren't married or anything. And she was younger. She's like, he goes, oh, I guess God, it's just meant to be. God wanted us to be parents. I'm like, really?
You're like,
I go, that's the reason she's pregnant? I thought it was because you guys,
because you didn't know the rules of conception. I mean, I didn't.
You didn't understand it?
I didn't.
Sooner or later.
It's interesting. When you're going through it, it's really hard. But then now we look back and it's like, how could we not have had the life that we had with the kids that we have?
Yeah.
It's like, it just, I can't imagine life without them. And I can't imagine them not being together. So
yeah,
everything happens for a reason. We just often don't know what it is until much later.
It's just harder to go. It's just hard going.
Well, because you write your own book, you write your own story, and then your story doesn't turn out that way. And so sometimes it's hard to just pivot and make that adjustment because you're like, no, this is how it's supposed to be. It can't be any other way because this is how I'm supposed to be the most happy. So.
Well, and my husband would always say, because with his family, no one had adopted.
Yeah.
And it was foreign to them too. And we not only said we're adopting, but then we adopted Black children, my 4 African or Black. And then my girls were drug babies. And so we're like, here, we're going to keep throwing stuff at you until
it's like Oprah, like, I'm going to give you this and I'm going to give you this and I'm going to give you that.
See how you take it.
Yeah.
But see, you don't, and also you don't know what you're going to open the door for other family members or people that because after that, a whole bunch of his family ended up adopting from
how about that
countries.
See the impact you had. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So
well, I think adoption, as you know, I mean, it's far reaching, and I mean,
you don't know whose life
you're going to change, and you also don't know whose life, like how your life is going to change. I'm sure that things that you didn't know existed in yourself were able to come to fruition because you were able, like, you went through this process adopting your children, and brought you and your wife closer together. You guys went through really hard things together, and that creates a bond that you can't have with other people.
Yep. Very true.
So I think adoption is obviously we're all advocates of adoption. And I think that it's such a beautiful thing. And I'm grateful for adoptive parents because I wouldn't have had the life I had if there wasn't adoptive parents.
And you know, people always say, oh, that's such a good thing you did for these kids. And I say, it's such a good thing they did for us. I'm like, it gave us a family. It's like, we didn't do it because we wanted to keep them together. We did it because we wanted a family.
Yeah.
And in the same process, we were able to keep them together. So that was great.
Yeah.
That was like a bonus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate when people say that.
I know. And I think it's just, I
do. I'm like, if I had $1, every time I heard someone say, oh, they're so lucky. And I'm like, I did it. I adopted for selfish reasons.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
purely selfish reasons on my part because I wanted to be a parent.
And I placed for selfish reasons because people are always like, oh, you're so selfless. I'm like, I mean, I just didn't want, like, I didn't want to be a parent right then.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. At 19, I didn't want to be a parent.
And I wasn't thinking of the child.
Yeah.
I just wanted a child.
Yeah.
So I'm like, no, they helped me.
Yeah. I think we all helped. We all helped each other.
Yeah.
That's right.
John, unfortunately we have to end because we're out of time, but thank you so much for joining us.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. I've really enjoyed talking to you both.